Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Bi-Weekly Roundup, the only show on the internet where I can't seem to stop talking about superhero shit for even a single episode. Oh, and occasionally lackluster biopics, I guess. I had a lot of fun doing the last bi-weekly roundup in this style, so these videos might start to feel a little more, loose, not as scripted, and that's because, well, they're not. And after the last episode, I was really determined to finally have an episode where I just don't talk about anything Marvel or DC or Dark Horse. I'm on the other side! Unfortunately, I kinda was preoccupied with finishing an entire season of television, but I did get out to see one movie, and I guess I'll talk about it first, even though there's really not a lot to talk about, sadly. Bohemian Rhapsody. So for those of you who don't know, this is a project that's sort of been languishing in development hell for a very long time now. I mean, you would think a movie based around a figure as iconic as Freddie Mercury probably would have already been greenlit and fast-tracked into production, but nope. So this is one of those movies that I was actually really looking forward to, and not for the reasons that I think everybody else was looking forward to it. You see, I had actually kept up with the production of this movie for quite a while, because I didn't even think this thing was ever gonna get made. For those of you who don't know, a while back, Sacha Baron Cohen was all lined up to play Freddie Mercury, and apparently the dedication he was putting into the role was really paying off, so I was really excited to see that. But unfortunately, for some reason, the band Queen, the surviving members of the band, have had this sort of apprehension to tell Freddie Mercury's story, like, brutal and honestly, so they didn't really want to go through with the type of movie that Sacha Baron Cohen wanted. Cohen wanted a very, hard R, real in-depth look at Freddie Mercury's life, and the band wanted something more akin to like a greatest hits collection. So it makes sense they wanted to do something more accessible to a wide range of people, so that everybody could sort of come and see it. And you could come and you could take your kids and you could get them into the beauty of Queen, and then they're gonna be like, yeah, Dad, this is old person music, and you're gonna be like, shut up, you're not even my kids. So for the entire time this movie's been in production, that's pretty much what the band has been trying to do. They've been trying to make a more watered down version of the story, and I was never really thrilled about that, but I was still interested when they snagged a great actor like Rami Malek to replace Sacha Baron Cohen, when he was just like, yeah, no, that's a terrible idea. I think I'll go back to doing, the weird shit I was doing. It seems to be working out pretty well. But then I looked a bit more into who was making the movie, and boy, did my enthusiasm just take a dive. This is partially directed by Bryan Singer, who also directed the X-Men movies. And if you don't know my thoughts on Singer, well, just take a look at this clip. I guess the director was busy molesting underage extras. I wasn't exactly thrilled that he was on board, but I was incredibly thrilled when I found out he left. More importantly, he just kind of stopped showing up. That sounds amazing. Bryan Singer, the movie you should be directing is Jail Time. But, and I'm not really sure at what point he came in. I've heard some reports that he was originally on the project and then left, and that's when Singer came in, and then he came back to finish it. But they brought in the guy who did Eddie the Eagle, which was, it was a fine movie, but it's definitely a better choice than I'm not a pedophile! That. But sadly, it looks like that interference from the band really sinks this picture, because this is by far one of the most lackluster biopics I've seen in a long time. The good things in this movie are the stuff that you already knew was gonna be pretty good. Yeah, Rami Malek does a pretty great job as Freddie Mercury. I'm still a little upset that I didn't get to see Sacha Baron Cohen's version, but as a replacement, Rami Malek does a great job. That is, when they're not incredibly watering down his past or just flat out making it seem like he was a bit of a dickhead. I mean, the way this movie plays around with events in Queen's timeline is just kind of like, I mean, I get it. You always have to rearrange some things in adapting a real-life story. But to almost completely downplay Mercury's sexuality, for those of you who don't know, I'll link a great video by Fact Fiend in the description that talks about this, but Mercury, he was a pretty wild guy. Do you really get anything like that in the movie? Do you think you'd get anything like that in the movie when the band's like, no, it should be about us. It should be about how we had to deal with him. It's like, yeah, because that's the interesting thing in this story, clearly. I kind of want to structure my criticism a bit, so I'll basically say this. The good things in this movie are actually really good. Malek's performances from a lot of the other cast, the music, and oh my god, the concert scenes are incredibly well done, especially the Live Aid sequence at the end. That is just phenomenal concert camera work, and I would say that I was happy I saw it for that portion of it. But it doesn't change the fact that the rest of the movie just feels so run-of-the-mill. Like, for a band this big, a band that lived this large, or at least a man that lived this large, like, the fact that it is this I'm gonna say boring for large chunks of it, is kind of impressive, especially because it moves at such a breakneck pace, and yet I still found myself checking my watch because I just flat out wasn't invested. I've seen too many movies like this by this point. The way I see it, if you want to make a biopic, you really got to stand out from the rest, because I think a lot of movies just fall into the same tropes and formulas, and it really doesn't grab my attention that much anymore. The biopics I tend to enjoy lately are the ones that don't use that as something holding them back. The ones that fully embrace artistic choices and different storytelling techniques to tell their story, because at the end of the day, you might be telling somebody's life, but in this context, you are still telling a story. And if you're telling that story in an interesting way, that can be really rewarding. But if you're telling it in the paint-by-numbers way that this one handled it, I'm just gonna check out eventually. Like, Freddie Mercury would come out to concerts riding on top of Darth Vader's shoulders. I mean, I know getting that kind of imagery from somebody like Disney ain't exactly easy these days, but still, one of the biggest things about Queen was their stage presence, was their live shows, was the showmanship that Freddie Mercury had. When a big subject in your movie, in real life, passed away due to the AIDS crisis, and the most you mention in the movie is just before the Live Aid segment, Freddie goes, "But by the way, I got AIDS, guys." I'd say if you're a big fan of Queen's music, which I'm gonna admit, I'm not. Like, they're a very good band. I like a lot of their songs, but they were never one of those bands I went absolutely wild for. I was always much more interested in Mercury himself. So seeing a movie that is more so focused on the band aspect, the aspect I don't really care about as much, I just really couldn't get into it. But if you're a fan of really captivating performances, Queen's music, and some really well done cinematography when it comes to concert films, then I think you might actually dig this one. So I'm kind of in a weird spot here, because on the one hand, I do think there is a lot to recommend, and on the other hand, I think this is incredibly lazy and phoned in. And on a third hand, this just isn't a train wreck, and I wanted a train wreck. Come on, the director just stopped showing up. Doesn't that sound like that movie would at least be fun to watch? But nope. Oh no, so I just gotta talk really quick about this. Mike Myers shows up in the movie, and you're just left going, why? Like, I get it, guys. I get it. He's like, oh, nobody's ever gonna, headbang to this in a car in the future, in a movie called Wayne's World. It's not a good joke, and to be honest, I think I'd just be much happier if Mike Myers just stayed in whatever hole he's been living in for a while. Did you know he really doesn't think that extras should be allowed to make eye contact with him? You were in the Love Guru. What high horse are you riding in on? What the fuck? So yeah, kind of a mixed bag. I think there's a lot of elements in here that are incredibly well pulled off, and that's really upsetting when I think about it, because the way I see it, this movie could have either been really great, up there with the great musical biopics, or it could have been a complete catastrophe that would have just been so fun to watch. But in the end, it turned out to be just the most bland, middle-of-the-road thing. Something that you probably should have expected, but I just had a little more hope. I had a little more hope in either direction. I was like, it at least shouldn't be boring. But guess I'm wrong again. Just like that time I thought serotonin would stay in my brain for the rest of my adult life. Yeah, see it if you want. Next thing. So now I'm going to do something I've never done on this show before. I'm going to talk about some Marvel stuff. So this is actually my second time recording this, because the first time my recorder stopped working in my pocket and I didn't realize it. So I have absolutely no idea how much of what I said is actually able to be heard. So I'm doing this all again, and hopefully I can streamline my thoughts, or if not, maybe I'll just scream into a pillow, who knows? Daredevil, Season 3. So I was a bit apprehensive to start this show. Lately I feel like I've just been pretty burnt out on the whole Marvel Netflix thing, and I feel like they were pretty burnt out on it too, because they weren't recommending this show at all. It wasn't popping up. It was like one of their biggest things, one of their biggest titles just wasn't coming across people's recommendations. I think that's very telling. I think Netflix is just like, could you guys not watch this? Disney's taking all their stuff back. Maybe you could watch one of our great programs instead, like 13 Reasons Why. I've made a terrible mistake in my career. Yeah, I haven't really been keeping up with these shows. It feels like after Defenders, I just kind of lost all my interest. The Defenders was such a thing. It felt like all these shows were leading up to this, in the way that all the Marvel movies in Phase 1 were leading up to the Avengers. But the difference was, when the Avengers came out, it felt like it was all worth it. You finally got to see all these heroes interact off each other and do these amazing action set pieces, and that was really cool. And then the Defenders had dragon bones. They couldn't take the dragon bones out because then New York would fall down. They have 5 seasons of television to think of a good plot for the Defenders, and that is what they came up with. Do you see why I wasn't too eager to revisit? But I've been hearing such great things about this season, and they brought back one of my favorite elements from the show, Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin, so I decided to check this one out. And I'm incredibly happy I did because, wow, this might be one of the best seasons of television I've seen in recent memory. Now, I don't watch too many TV shows, mainly because I just don't have the time. And like, on top of that, a lot of TV shows don't really grip me the way that movies do. But I'd say after about episode 2 of this season, I was fully on board for all of what was going on in season 3 of Daredevil. Charlie Cox's performance in this season is completely fantastic. You really buy that Matt Murdock is losing his mind and that he has nothing left to lose anymore. You know he's really gonna go for it, and seeing his journey as a character is just so enthralling in this season. With every bad decision, or with everything you know he should probably take some more time to think about, you're there in the sidelines going like, no, don't do that, or you're cheering him on when he finally gets like something to go his way. It's kind of like just an anxious ride, because you're dealing with these characters that you know aren't in the right headspace, and they're gonna do these crazy things, and you never know what's gonna happen. So you're just always left going, no, don't do that, don't go there, just be good, please, don't die. Like, I haven't felt that level of involvement in a TV show in quite a while, so I was very impressed to see it here. And I think that really comes down to Cox's performance. This is the most I've been invested in Matt Murdock's story, and I think the way they handled a lot of the concepts that Frank Miller introduced in the Born Again arc were incredibly well pulled off. And as a matter of fact, pulled off better than they were in the original work, I'd say. Because, you know, this wasn't written by Frank Miller. Because Frank Miller's not a good writer. Can we all admit this by this point?
Yeah, I'll write a Daredevil comic. Everybody's got me addicted to drugs and got lots of naked women, lots of blood. What's that? You're not gonna publish my Batman comic where Batman goes to the Middle East and just murders a bunch of people for no reason? Okay, I'll just change it to some random hero and I'll publish it anyway. Millard again!
I don't know if Frank Miller actually sounds like that, and if I hurt my throat because of it, that's a bit of a waste, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that arc, or a lot of Miller's stories in general, but I think the way this show has been able to adapt them to the screen in a way that still makes me feel invested and like I'm really eager to find out what's gonna happen next, that's impressive. Especially with all the nonsense and rewrites and retcons that go into comic storylines, I'm very impressed by that. But it wasn't just Cox's performance I want to gush over. Vincent D'Onofrio really brings it as Kingpin this season. This is the first time I ever felt legitimately afraid of him as a character, because you just feel the sense of helplessness that the characters feel when they're dealing with him. Like, you as an audience member see that, and I think that's really what brought me in. I was afraid of every single move Wilson Fisk made in this series because you just didn't know how far it was gonna go. And yes, it's kind of funny how he just sort of randomly launches into impromptu stories about his childhood. Mr. Fisk, congratulations, I've made you breakfast.
When I was a boy!
Yeah, a lot of that can be kind of funny, but it didn't take away from how terrifying his performance was at times. And even more impressive, they made Bullseye into a scary villain as well. Congratulations! Even Colin Farrell couldn't seem to do that.
Bullseye!
Well, if this Bullseye did that at any point in the show, I would have given it like an 11. I would have gone above whatever possible score I could give it. Anytime this character was on screen, I was so anxious. You never know what he's gonna do or where his head's at, and usually with insane characters, it just feels very hammy, very unnatural. Like, you can't really be afraid of these characters because they're playing it up so much, and you know that really an insane person wouldn't act like this. This is just some sort of like Jared Leto. Can that be a term? But no, they really pulled this character off well. Anytime he's on screen, I was trembling. You never know what he's gonna do. You never know where his head's at. And that leads to some incredible tension and some even more amazing fight scenes given his abilities. I felt like this was the first time that you really saw how dangerous Bullseye as a character could be. Even bit players like Karen or Foggy do really great work this season. As a matter of fact, Karen has a moment in the season that had me cheering just as much as I was for any of the other characters. And I was really taken aback by that, because in a lot of ways it feels like this character hasn't gotten her full time to shine yet, but she really gets a lot of that in this season. There's a conversation between her and Wilson Fisk that is just so good. So good. You did a great job. And I guess I'll close off on something I wasn't really expecting, but the fight scenes and the cinematography this season are the best they have ever been. It's obvious that they step up the fight choreography for, you know, a bigger season, but what I was not expecting is how much of a big visual improvement the show just got overall. This is the first time the Netflix shows have really captured that thing that I think the Marvel movies do so well, where a lot of the Marvel movies, these big action set pieces, they feel like comic splash pages really coming to life up there on the big screen, and I think this was was the first season that Netflix really started to do that as well. There are images in here ripped straight out of the comics, and it looks perfect. I was incredibly on board for the visuals this season. It was a nice touch that I really wasn't expecting. But the show, of course, isn't without its faults. I think it ends really abruptly. Like, I think this is a problem with a lot of shows and when they're trying to close up their season story arc. It just feels like everything wraps up pretty quickly, but I'm not complaining because I did get 13 solid hours of television prior to that, so beggars can't be choosers. The first episode of this season isn't that great. It kind of kept me away from watching the rest of the episodes. Like I said, I wasn't really hooked until episode 2 or so. There's a phenomenal sequence in episode 2, and you'll know it when you see it. But the first episode, it felt very odd. Like, there's an extended flashback to a moment from season 2, I believe, and they show like a lengthy clip. It's just like, that's on here. We could just watch it. That first episode definitely felt like they were killing some time to get to the more interesting stuff. It felt like you could have cut the first episode out entirely, or maybe you just trimmed it down and you still would have had an incredibly solid season. And the ending to that episode, like the very end bit of it, is really good. So I can't really say too much. Honestly, I'm looking for bad things to say about this show, and there are some, but overall, I'm finding a really hard time thinking of things to complain about. This is a great season of television, or of Netflix. I still don't. It's a show. It's a show. You can watch it. It's a pretty good show. And I think I'll wrap this up really quickly because if I don't rein myself in, I might just gush endlessly about every single episode. I could do it. I really could. But batteries are dying, so let's wrap this shit up. Yeah, I liked it that much. I mean, I do think those few minor elements I mentioned, they do detract from the overall experience. It's not a flawless, smooth ride, and there are moments where the performances are a bit more lackluster, or you could tell they were definitely working with some constraints, but yeah, I've seen other Netflix shows where they were working with similar constraints and they were not pulled off nearly this well, so I highly recommend this. If you're a fan of the first season, you'll love this season. If you're a fan of the second season, why? If you're a fan of the third season, wait, no, I think fans of the first season and just fans of good television in general will really get into this. And yeah, that's it. That's all I really wanted to talk about this episode. I want to try and keep these to just 2 things. I know the original goal was to just cover a bunch of movies, or I guess now I'm doing TV shows if I watch them, but I do want to try and keep it down to just 2 things, because 1, it makes the thumbnail so much easier to see, and 2, if I'm gonna be just extemporaneously talking about my thoughts on these movies. These can become quite long sessions, and I want to keep it as tight and as focused as I possibly can. So I think I'm going to stick to 2, but we'll see in the future. But yeah, did you guys like this? If you did, be sure to leave a like on it down below. That really helps me out, as do comments and shares. Maybe comment down below with a movie suggestion for me to check out either on here or on my other show, Bad Movie Touch. Always love getting cool comments from you guys. Plus, the YouTube algorithm says I have to or I'll starve to death. Woo! So I like getting viewer feedback because it helps me do what I like to do, and it helps me bring out more content to you guys. So feel free to leave a comment down below and share this video around if you liked it. That helps me out too. I love getting my stuff in front of new eyes, and you might have noticed that I've been wearing this shirt that I am probably been messing with the color in post because I wanted to draw attention to it, because as you might notice, this is a shirt for my movie, and I've talked about this movie several times on the channel, but I want to talk about it right now because I just put up a brand new trailer for it, and we've been getting some great feedback on that. People really seem to be excited for this film, and I'm so happy. If you haven't seen that, go check it out, because we've been working so hard on this for so long, and we finally have something to show you guys from it, or at least something new, and people have been reacting quite well, so be sure to check that out. I'll link that somewhere. I'll also link all the social media stuff for my movie and all that. I'll link my Twitter as well. You can follow me if you... I can't really think of what type of person would enjoy my tweets, so, but you can follow me and you can see the stuff I tweet about if you want. And if you want to have your name on this end screen here, help me make my content, or most importantly, stop me from dying of ketosis, then you can head on over to my Patreon. You can get lots of cool rewards, like I said, your name on this end screen, early access to videos, and I'm going to be rolling out a bunch more stuff in the future, so be sure to head on over there, because I'm incredibly thankful to all my wonderful patrons who keep me doing what I love to do and making the content I want to make. That means so much to me, and I'm so happy that you guys are enjoying it. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Be sure to check out the new trailer, and I'll You know, I'll put all the usual links in the end. I hope you guys are liking the new show setup, and I will be back soon with an episode of Bad Movie Touch. Probably going to be another guest episode. I think you guys are really going to like it just based on the movie selection alone, so look forward to that. I'm doing a lot right now, and hopefully I'll have a bunch more content on the channel for you guys soon. Till then, if you want to keep up with my stuff, be sure to subscribe, because you'll see the stuff instantly, or at least you will if you click the bell or you do whatever you have to do to actually get notified of people's stuff now. But subscribing helps me out, and yeah. It's always awkward after I've decided I'm done shooting the video, because I still got to get up and turn the camera off. So, I don't even know if I'm going to edit this out, but we'll see.